An audio recording captures President Nixon plotting a cover-up, the CIA destroying interrogation recordings before anyone could see them, a banned hospital documentary showing what really went on behind locked doors, and more. These are disturbing recordings that were hidden from the public. Back in 1972, men connected to President Nixon's re-election campaign broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate building in Washington, D.C. They were planting listening devices, stealing documents to give Nixon the edge in the campaign. The investigation quickly pointed to people inside the White House. Nixon's staff tried to cover it up, paying off the burglars, interfering with the FBI investigation, and straight up lying to the public. Proof of Nixon's involvement ended up being revealed in an audio recording which has since been referred to as the smoking gun tape. See, in 1971, before all this happened, Nixon had secretly installed a recording system in the White House. Hidden mics were in the Oval Office, Cabinet Room, phones, Camp David. Every conversation, from casual talks, meetings, phone calls, was recorded, creating over 3,700 hours of audio. The most infamous recording was on June 23, 1972. Nixon and his chief of staff were plotting to use the CIA to block the FBI's investigation. That tape proved Nixon was actively trying to cover up the Watergate scandal. Once the Supreme Court forced him to hand over the tapes in 1974, there was no saving his presidency, and Nixon resigned. In the early 2000s, after the September 11th attacks, the CIA was running a secret program holding and interrogating terror suspects at black site prisons overseas. One of the main sites was in Thailand, and the CIA videotaped these sessions. According to what we know now, there were 92 tapes covering 2 high-value detainees. In November 2005, the CIA ordered all 92 tapes destroyed. Nobody outside the agency had seen them, and for years the public didn't even know they existed. It wasn't until December 2007 that journalists reported the tapes had been made and then destroyed, revealing interrogations that involved, quote, enhanced interrogation techniques, which is the government's fancy way of saying a word that YouTube doesn't allow us to say without this video being flagged. Starts with a T-O-R, ends with a chur. Gotta love excessive censorship. Anyway, when the CIA finally admitted the tapes were gone, it was not received well. I mean, how bad were these interrogations that they decided the evidence needed to be destroyed? There's this documentary from 1967 called Titicut Follies that got banned from public release for almost 25 years. The reason it was held back really shows just how powerful a recording can be when it exposes the truth. Filmmaker Frederick Wiseman went inside Bridgewater State Hospital for the criminally insane in Massachusetts and just let the camera roll. Nothing was staged, just raw footage of the day-to-day reality of a place that was basically hidden from the outside world. When the film was about to premiere at the New York Film Festival, the state freaked out. They got a court order to block it from being shown publicly and even argued it violated patients' privacy. The judge went so far as to order copies destroyed, and for decades after that, only doctors and lawyers and other professionals were allowed to watch it, but it had to be at special screenings. It wasn't until 1991 that a court finally said the public had the right to see it. By then, most of the people filmed had passed away, and that argument of free speech outweighed privacy concerns. After that, it finally aired on public TV and eventually got a DVD release, finally letting everyone see what had been kept mostly hidden for almost 25 years. Next, we're talking about another documentary. This one was banned in Israel. The film is called Jenin. It was made in 2002 by Palestinian actor and director Mohammed Bakri, and it interviews people in the Jenin refugee camp after an intense Israeli military operation there in April of 2002. After a deadly wave of attacks in Israel, the Israeli Defense Forces launched Operation Defensive Shield, which included going into the Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank. During the fighting, the Israeli military refused to let journalists or rights groups into the camp, so almost all the information coming out at the time was rumor and speculation. Some said hundreds of civilians had died though. Bakri snuck into Jenin with a camera and asked people what they experienced. The result is the Palestinians talking, describing what they lived through in their own words. After a few showings, the Israeli Film Ratings Board banned it, saying it was libelous and one-sided, and tried to stop screenings. At one point, the ban got lifted, then later brought back again years later, so it's kind of gone back and forth. In May 1969, right before the Apollo 11 moon landing, NASA sent Apollo 10 to orbit the moon as a kind of full dress rehearsal. At one point, the crew went around the far side of the moon. Years later, when the mission audio was reviewed and released, something strange came up. The astronauts started talking about hearing this weird, high-pitched sound coming through their headsets. One of them described it as sounding like outer space type music. Now, at the time, this wasn't shared with the public. The recordings just sat in NASA archives. It wasn't until decades later, when mission transcripts and audio started getting released, that people even knew this happened. NASA eventually said it was probably interference between the spacecraft's radios, but the sound was pretty haunting. This ghostly whooshing noise must have been really freaky, especially being out in the blackness of space, further from home than most of us will ever even dream of being. Yeah, yikes. Most people know Nixon taped conversations in the White House, like we discussed earlier, but this wasn't the first president to secretly record meetings. President John F. Kennedy did it as well, and for years most of those recordings were locked away. Long before Watergate, JFK had recording systems set up that captured his meetings and phone calls in the Oval Office during his presidency. A lot of this was meant to create a record of conversations with advisors about policy, Cold War stuff, and everything from Cuba to civil rights. And at the time, very few people outside Kennedy's inner circle knew the tapes existed. While some of these recordings were eventually archived, a big chunk of them stayed hidden for decades after JFK's death, because the Kennedy Library had to go through them slowly and systematically make sure classified info was protected. In January 2012, the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library officially released the final 45 hours of those secret White House tapes, including recordings from just months before the end of his presidency. That brought the total to over 248 hours of recorded conversations and phone calls that had never been available to the public before. Now, the footage you're looking at here probably seems pretty unremarkable. It's a plane taking off. Alright, whatever, but this isn't just any plane. This plane is part of a top secret airline that for a long time wasn't ever officially acknowledged. It's called Jenin Airlines, which isn't even the official name, it's just what the public has nicknamed it. This is a fleet of planes run for the US Air Force, and their entire job is to fly workers into highly classified military sites, and yes, that includes places like Area 51. The planes take off from a private unmarked terminal at the Las Vegas airport, separate from regular passengers. The people on these flights are all military personnel with high-level clearance. The planes are usually just white passenger jets with a single red stripe. There's no logo. But they fly constantly, sometimes hundreds of flights a week, going back and forth between Vegas and these restricted places. For years, this whole operation was kind of this open secret. People would spot the planes, but officially, there was never any acknowledgement of what they were doing, and even now, the details are still murky. Most people know about the few Pentagon UFO videos that got released in 2020, but that's really just a small slice of what the military has. Back in the 2000s and 2010s, Navy pilots, fighter jets, and other military sensors captured dozens of videos and radar recordings of objects moving in ways that couldn't be explained. These weren't some blurry lights in the sky. The footage includes infrared radar and aircraft camera clips that show objects making sharp turns, suddenly stopping, and just doing movements that don't match any known aircraft. The 4 videos that leaked and went public were shocking enough, but the Pentagon admits they're holding more recordings the public has never seen. Some of these are supposedly high-quality, full-color footage captured by trained military personnel. Insiders say that at least 46 videos exist. Members of Congress have demanded some of these clips be released, but the Pentagon says it can't release them because it could expose sensitive military operations and technology. So it'll probably be a long time before we see these things. Most people don't realize that the airwaves were, and still are, packed with secret messages meant for undercover spies. One of the weirdest ones was a station nicknamed the Lincolnshire Poacher, was an unofficial, off-the-books operation run by British intelligence. Every single broadcast started the same way. This tinny, synthesized version of an old English folk song, the Lincolnshire Poacher, would play, and it sounded like it was coming from a haunted ice cream truck. The same melody would play 12 times in a row. Once the music stopped, a woman's voice, totally robotic and emotionless, would come on and start reading groups of 5 numbers over and over again. They were coded messages, and technically anyone with a radio could come across this. You just wouldn't be able to make sense of any of it if you weren't in the know. Now, the reason they did it this way is actually pretty brilliant. See, if a spy got caught with a high-tech military transmitter, they were done for. But everyone had a shortwave radio back then, so you could be sitting in a cafe or a hotel room while receiving top-secret orders from M16. And that's been the video. I will catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next one.